This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. It's episode 459 of the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm Jamie Bogner, and joining me today from Michigan is Zach Typinski of Urbanrest. Welcome to the podcast, Zach.
Hey, Jeremy. How you doing? Pleasure. Honor to be here.
As you know, I have been to the brewery. We didn't get to see each other while I was there. It was kind of a last-minute thing a couple years ago, and I was popping up to do the Shrams episode of the podcast, and I was like, oh, wait, Urbanrest is right there. So I shot you an email, and it just wasn't going to – it was too short notice to pull that together. But I did get to enjoy some beers in the tap room. And of course, over the years, you guys have sent us a bunch of beer, a bunch of beer that has scored insanely well. The Work German Pils 96, Perpetual Fog Double IPA 96, the Wine Barrel Blonde 96, Märzenbier 95, Imperial Stout Will We Ever Hug Again got a 95, the Zoso Saison got a 94. And then in 2022, you won a World Beer Cup Bronze for Easy Button American Strong Pale Ale. And then, of course, this past year, you won a gold for your American Pils Kaiser at GABF. And so I was like, we should probably have this conversation about brewing right about now. So what we're going to talk about, I guess we have to talk about lager brewing and IPA brewing and all of those other things. Before we do that, G&D's biggest edge isn't just the equipment, it's their deep understanding of brewery operations. From layout to production flow, they bring real-world expertise and build reliable systems that last, whether it's a single-stage 5H or a vertical air chiller. New Belgium Brewing recently partnered with G&D to install a propane-based Elite 290 chiller, delivering around 50% energy savings compared to CO2 systems. As Andy Collins, New Belgium's carbon-neutral engineer, put it, quote, "We're really happy to work with a partner like G&D Chillers who helped us significantly reduce the amount of HFCs used in our refrigeration systems," end quote. With 24/7 support and remote monitoring, your cold side stays dialed in day or night. See how leading breweries are cutting energy costs at gdchillers.com. And Berkeley Yeast just launched Dry Tropics London, their best-selling liquid yeast strain, now with all the ease-of-use benefits of dry yeast. Dry Tropics London delivers the soft, pillowy mouthfeel and juicy character you'd expect from a top-tier London ale strain, but with a serious upgrade. A burst of thiols that unleash vibrant, layered notes of grapefruit and passion fruit. A lot of brewers love the clean passion fruit you get from Tropics, but they don't want every IPA to be a tropical fruit bomb. At the dry yeast price point, you can pitch and ditch without breaking the bank, or you can co-pitch with your house strain to adjust the intensity of the notes. And with nationwide free shipping, there's never been a better time to try Dry Tropics. Order now at berkeleyyeast.com and experience the ease and impact of Dry Tropics London yeast. And this episode is sponsored by PakTech, delivering craft beer multi-packing you can trust. PakTech's handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable, helping breweries close the loop and advance the circular economy. With a minimalist design, durable functionality you can rely on, and custom color matching, PakTech helps brands stand out while staying sustainable. Trusted by craft brewers nationwide, they offer a smarter, sustainable way to carry your beer. To learn more, visit paktech-opi.com. That's paktech-opi.com. All right, Zach, you know how we start this off. We start off with a little background and history. Tell us yours. Map out that arc through brewing that led you to launch Urbanrest.
So love for beer started out in Kalamazoo when I was going to college, Western Michigan University. My wife and I, obviously.
There's some okay beer in Kalamazoo.
Just okay. Yep.
Just okay. Yeah.
I tell you what, some of those keggers, were just eye-opening. And beers I had never had before just completely blew my mind. So started off there, went to business school. Final project in business school was a brewery. And so this was 2008, 2009. And it was just a great project to work on. Another guy in the class had been an avid home brewer at that time. I wasn't brewing at all, but it was just really something cool and really inspiring. Graduated college and went to some career fairs. I was going to go into kind of some sports related fields at the time, big baseball guy. And not a single person from that career fair called me back. Well, one person did, but not a single sports team did. That person was a beer distributor. And that beer distributor said, hey, I know you just graduated business school, business degree. I'll pay you $9 an hour to stock shelves at Meyer and Kroger. And said, okay, I was living with my wife's dad at the time and my now wife. And so, took that job. It was the Miller Coors house. And just absolutely exploded. I loved it. Within 6 months, had started brewing my own beers. My wife had kind of bought me my first homebrew kit and just fell in love with it. Very education-focused distributor. And so just took advantage of all the different things that they were offering. My chromatic education, Miller Coors educations, did the BJCP thing, got my advanced Cicerone certification. And then all the while just kind of going nuts with homebrewing. So in a matter of 3 years, I had brewed probably 350 different beers. Absolutely nuts with it. I tend to go a little crazy with my hobbies. It's just something I go deep into stuff that I love. And at the distributor, I was working my way around to different fields. I worked on premise, off premise. I worked chain specific. Of course, I did the merchandising thing. And then I worked craft specific for a couple years as well. So I was focused in a craft portfolio and growing that. And there were awesome brands like Hoegaarden, Hockershore, Affligem, Hall Honor, just like a really great craft portfolio. So I got to work firsthand with those, go to some of the breweries, experience that. And then got picked up by a large national craft brand to manage a multi-state footprint, all the while knowing that the end goal was to start my own brewery. And so started with them, traveled around, opened a bunch of different states, opened a bunch of different distributors, and got to sit on those meetings and lead those meetings as well. And then every once in a while, my wife and I would save up enough money for a tank, and so we'd buy a tank, we'd put it in storage, with the end goal, again, of starting our own brewery. And so I was very open with the large national craft brand that I was with at the time. Hey, my intentions are to start my own brewery. And, of course, this is like 2014, 2015. They're like, yeah, sure, buddy. We support you, do your thing. Everyone wants to do that. And I had gotten a job part-time working for Kunin, which is a legendary local craft brewery here. They're from my hometown, which is Warren. These guys, Eric and Brett, the brothers, just absolutely incredible. Opened up their doors to me, and I started washing kegs literally right at the bottom. And then picking their head brewer's brain at the time. And I've always just been the guy who wasn't afraid to ask any questions. And that's what I did. I just bugged them. And I just asked and asked and asked more. And then I started running their homebrew shop. They had a homebrew shop across the street at the time. And so, a little bit on the distributor side, a little bit on the homebrew side, a little bit on the production brewing side, all the while really developing our business plan, fine-tuning our recipes, and then buying some tanks, And so we knew we weren't going to be able to start the way that a lot of folks were, which was, buying some brand new equipment, getting a loan. And the access that we had was dairy. So Michigan is a big dairy state. We put literal classified ads in papers in the local papers looking for tanks. And so we would buy one every few months, outfit it, and then kind of just stick it in storage. And eventually, I had met a gentleman on a plane who was reading a book about water. And I said, okay, you're a brewer. What's happening? It was kind of a happenstance fate, thing that happened. I took a red-eye flight home, and he was sitting on that plane, one of 10 people on the plane reading about water. Got to talking, and turns out he had a dairy tank, 7-barrel brewery in storage in his garage. And it was like, serendipitous. And we hit it off. We had a very similar style. And then within a year had kind of become partners. Just started building out the brewery, found a local spot here in Ferndale, which is our home, and just wanted a neighborhood community focused brewery, and opened up in 2017 as Urbanrest Brewing Company. So Urbanrest is the name of the community in the early 1900s. So very focused on history, very focused on the local community. It was actually a resort community for people who were traveling from Detroit to Pontiac. And so I'm not sure if you know this, but Woodward is the first paved road in America. And so it's called Woodward because it was wood planks once upon a time. And yeah, so settled in 2017. We opened our doors in June as a little small urban farmhouse brewery, we were calling it kind of at the time. And from then have been off and running.
So you've kind of staked out, and now you have 2 tap rooms, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. 2 tap rooms, both in the city of Ferndale. We do most of our main production at our Wolcott facility, which we opened up first. And then in 2020, we opened up our second location in downtown Ferndale.
Oh, great timing. 2020.
Yeah,
Perfect. Yeah. Sure.
Well,
sure.
It allowed us access, to be quite honest. We would never been able to afford a spot in the downtown space. Businesses, were looking for businesses to get there. There were grants available. And so allowed us access to be able to have some affordable rents and then to access a portion of the community that we hadn't before. And so our downtown location is a big driver for people who have never heard of us, don't know that we have a brewery in Ferndale. Our production facility tap room is kind of tucked in the middle of a neighborhood. And so it drives a lot of traffic from people to the downtown space to our original facility.
Well, this focus on serving your local community means that, which is an interesting one coming from someone who has spent so much time working on big brands in this kind of everything from retail chains to, on-premise, to then refocus on selling beer directly over the taproom bar or primarily through that, route is, it's kind of an interesting one, but it also gives you the freedom as a craft brewer to explore lots of different kinds of beers and the kind of lower volume, which also speaks to this crazy homebrewer mentality of 300 something batches, dialing it in, but I mean, that you can, it's a cool one to see working through the industry, the bigger side of the industry, to understand all of those dynamics and how that works and matching that with this kind of passion for exploration in brewing. And it seems like you have both sides of that skill set. So I want to talk about, how you then, focus the beer program. Before we do that, the multi-layered wonders of indie hop strata are now easier than ever for brewers to tap into. Introducing Strata Cryo in collaboration with Yakima Chief Hops. Whether brewing up a single hop Strata IPA to wow customers with the depth of flavor this variety delivers, or modernizing your flagship IPA to continue setting the highest standards, Strata T90, Strata CGX, Strata Hyperboost, and now Strata Cryo provide the tools for brewers to create their unique masterpiece. Indie Hop Strata, life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And this podcast is sponsored by the Midea 50/50 Flex, the industry's first dual compartment 3-way convertible freezer. The 50/50 Flex is designed to flex with your life. It can convert to all fridge, all freezer, or half and half with just the touch of a button. Plus, with reversible doors and adjustable storage compartments, you can stay organized no matter what your food storage needs. The 50/50 Flex is also designed to maintain a stable temperature, even in non-climate controlled spaces, so it's perfect for your garage, man cave, or wherever you need a little more space. Maybe use all 20 cubic feet as a beer fridge. Check out midea.com/US for more information on how to take your beer storage to the next level. Also, your brewery deserves a supplier that can keep your customers engaged with new flavors. That's why Old Orchard releases juice concentrates and blends with trending flavor profiles like white sangria and passion orange guava. If you need a custom solution, Old Orchard's R&D team wants to hear from you. Fruit ingredients that get Old Orchard's free samples at oldorchard.com/brewer. That's oldorchard.com/brewer. Old Orchard, that's a Michigan company for you right there, and of course, well placed for that. Let's talk about beer program, Zach. You're first and foremost trying to serve a local audience through tap rooms. Also, you do some packaging and get some beer out there within your local sphere. So I shouldn't say it's all over the bar. As you were designing a beer program, talk to me about some of the kind of core pillars that you've worked into it.
So really it's just beer first, beer forward. Again, I learned a lot of perspective from the distribution side, mainly that I just wanted to stay home. I didn't want to travel around anymore. I wanted to sell the beer over the bar. I wanted to tell the story. Some of the strongest brands had these really great local followings. These third place, we talk about a lot, community institutions, where they got to develop these relationships, tell their story, talk to the people, engage with the community. And so really that's the foundation, of our tap room, the foundation of our brewery program. Actually, when we first opened, I was incredibly focused on being Saison brewery only. I only wanted to do Saison. My wife and smarter business partner than I said, this is silly. I mean, you've spent so much time making IPA. A lot of my recipes that I was doing at the time were clone recipes. I didn't have the resources to share beer with other people to ask if they were good. And so what I'd do is I'd make 2 hearted clones. I'd make Sierra Nevada Pale Ale clones, and I'd measure them against commercial examples, again, because I wanted to design commercial beers. And so when we started out, I was going to be Saison focused, and she said, "You're foolish. Your hoppy beers are awesome." And for a long time, I was trying to make clear beer, and the tides turned in 2017, and I was like, I can make hazy IPA. Let's go. And so we were actually at
the perfect intersection of of IPA for Saison brewers right there, right? You get to focus on fermentation and not worry about excessive filtration. Yeah.
Yep. And so, I mean, we still do quite a bit of Saison, just enough to scratch the itch that I constantly have. I love Belgian styles too. They're near and dear to my heart, but I really love all beer styles, and so we started out with 4 different beers. Again, just easy drinking, approachable beers, nothing to blow out the palate, but something that was great with food. So we have food trucks every day that we're open all year round. And so we want low ABV beers that people can have a couple of, go home and just, hang out with their kids, walk home to their house just down the street, have a nice bit of tacos or Polish food or whatever it is that we have here that day. And just be a part of something special, again, that's enriched and ingrained in the community.
And so lager becomes a natural kind of segue there as you're thinking about these kinds of easy to drink, accessible beers, with enough flavor that sets them apart as a reason to go to the brewery and well made. But also, now you're making lagers at a somewhat small scale. And, as every brewer knows, that poses its own kinds of challenges. Obviously, however you have figured out, to do that has certainly paid off both in GABF medals and in scores from our judges. So let's talk a little bit about that. You hit that timing well over the last, 5 or 6 years. The whole, focus amongst craft beer drinkers on more accessible, easy drinking lagers is, it's just shot up. And so, but making them on the scale that you brew at, poses some challenge. Talk about, how you started developing a, both a lager program and a process around making lager beer, making award-winning lager beer at that kind of scale.
So really, I'm in a fortunate position that I'm a brewer and I'm also an owner, and so I'm not constrained by having to turn tanks. I don't have any distributor commitments. We're selling 99% of the beer we make over our bars. And so it's allowed us, again, the ability to just let the beer do its thing, take the time that it needs in order for it to shine, and make no compromises when doing so. And so 2020, we were 3 years into the brewery. Obviously, pandemic hit. My first son was born April 2020. And so we're fortunately at a stable enough position as a company where we had been established, and we're finally had enough tank space to be able to do it. So we did 130 barrels our first year. Second year we did 250. Third year we did 350. Just absolute explosive growth. We started way too small, but always had a 7-barrel kit, and so we didn't have to brew every day because it's always just been a couple of us in the brewery. And so 2020 allowed us really the time to get heavy into lager brewing. and give the beer the time it needs in order to get where it needs to go. And I've always been a detail-focused person. I love a good challenge, and so lager brewing has been that challenge for me to really let simple ingredients shine, and let that that beer just do its thing, take its time. We've made significant investments in it. So although we're only doing 700 barrels a year, we have 5 horizontal tanks dedicated to lagering beer, and most of our lagers are taken anywhere from 10 to 13 weeks. No filtration, no fining. It's all naturally done through krausening and all that, which we can get to. But again, just the beer is ready when it's ready, and not a day before.
And I guess, that can work if you are selling it at that margin that you can make selling it over your own bar.
It only works that way.
It only really works. Exactly. Otherwise, it has to be at scale. But brewing lagers on a 7-barrel system, I do not envy you on that. But clearly it's working. And so let's talk about pils, both American pils and German pils, because your American pils won a GABF Gold. Your German pils is one of the highest scoring beers you've sent to us. And so maybe let's follow that process down and kind of look at some of the points of differentiation as we go, and also talk about some of the technical points that you've worked into your process around these. And maybe we'll start with kind of base malt and ingredients. How have you approached both of these beers? Or is it the same kind of base, or is there some variation in in how you mix malt between these two?
Very different, to be honest. Work our German Pilsner. I try to go to the region where the malt is made. When I'm making a German Pils, I typically use German malt. And when I'm making American Pils, I'm using American malt. But actually, those beers are very different in their grist composition, with a similar endpoint. And so work starts with a blend of German Pilsner malts. And so I love blending base malts to give a lot of character. We don't really have the ability to step mash here. We're a single infusion system. I have a direct fire kettle. Can't really do decoction that easily at all. And so start with that foundation of German Pilsner malt, to blend the German Pilsner malt.
And talk to me about why you would blend and what you get out of some of these different German Pilsner malts by blending.
I just like the small nuance and characteristics you get from blending some of those malts. And so, Weyermann Pilsner to me, has that kind of honey cracker note to it. Whereas Best Pilsner has some of those same types of notes, but also maybe a little bit of grassiness, maybe a little bit of hay. And so getting that flavor nuance that maybe you would work out through a decoction, through a step infusion, I'm able to kind of reverse engineer a little bit by blending those Pilsner malts. And so we still want, obviously, that Pilsner malt character as the heart and soul of the beer, but without it being one note, so to speak. So I really like blending those base malts for that. And honestly, I blend base malts into IPAs. Pretty much everything we do, we have kind of that blended base malt approach. I really love that approach.
So it's not all one, it's not all the other. You get to kind of blend. It's when you do a blend, is it generally a 50-50 blend, or are you getting more complex than that in some of your blends? Try to high point certain characteristics.
So some of the blends can be a little more complex. Some of them can be, 50-50. Work Pils is about 60-40. And again, it's a Weyermann Pils primarily, and then some Best Pils. So a little bit challenging because we have to order from 2 different suppliers. But at times I've done Weyermann Pils, Weyermann Extra Pale Premium Pils. I mess a lot with okay, what am I getting out of these 2 different blends? More often than not, Work Pils is Weyermann Pils and Weyermann Extra Pale Premium.
I love it. These recipes that you can tell the homebrew roots have not strayed too far. You get to a bigger production brewery, and let's figure out how to make this more simple. But but that's the fun thing, and that's one of the strengths and benefits of being small. There are certainly things you trade off for that, but this is one of the things where you can kind of dial in that kind of way. And then on the American Pils, talk to me about that kind of grist base.
So we've been very focused on local malt for a very long time since we started, and it kind of made its segue in through Saison Brewing. Really wanted to keep that kind of tradition going. So we used Empire Malt for a long time until sadly they went out of business, Great Lakes Malt, and then Sugar Creek Malt within the last few years. Caleb over at Sugar Creek has done an awesome job. And so Kaiser, which kind of took its roots as a Franconian style Keller beer, has slowly modified its way into a paler and lighter beer. It's always been 100% Vienna malt. And so even though it won in American Pilsner, it does not contain a single kernel of Pilsner malt, which is crazy.
What?
Yes,
What?
Let's go. So yeah, it's 100% Vienna malt beer. And again, I for a long time, I was using a blend of Weyermann Vienna, Best Vienna, or Empire, 50-50, 60-40. And then the beer that won, actually the last 3 iterations have been 100% Sugar Creek Vienna malts. And they are malting that to a much lower Lobelmann. So this is like 2.5 Lobelmann. And so a very pale Vienna malt. It doesn't have that extra richness or nuttiness that you might get from, say, a Weyermann or a Best. And I just really wanted to make that ingredient shine. Again, Caleb and the team doing absolutely awesome job with that. And so as far as I know, that's all winter barley grown at Sugar Creek, and so it's much more sustainable from an agricultural standpoint. There's no irrigation in the winter barley, and it's something that allows them to grow 2 different crops in the year. And so it's something I've been focused on and supportive of for a very long time. And so yeah, the heart and soul of Kaiser American Pils is don't put any pills in it.
Your secret is safe with us. But no, that's kind of amazing. And I always love when I find these counterintuitive things, through these kinds of conversations. And folks, again, competition categories are simply there as, they as long as those beers fit the specs of the category, doesn't exactly matter what you make it with. I'm curious about this, Vienna malt though from Sugar Creek. Sounds super light. What is it about the actual malt flavor that you think kind of complements this American Pils so well?
Well, I really think it still leans in that kind of cracker, hay, kind of straw, a little grassy, but it gives you some richer tones. And so, it's not going full, nutty, toasty like a traditional Vienna malt would, but it gives you that richer cracker. And I love that kind of like toasty oyster cracker character that comes from their Vienna malt. And I just thought, oh my God, what a beautiful base to just, again, have a point of differentiation. A lot of, beers you send out for judging, it's like, okay, how can I differentiate myself from the crowd who's just primarily going to do, whether or not it's American Pilsner malt or, Bavarian Pilsner malts or whatever it is. And so it really gives this very elegant, refined, slightly richer character that you would typically get from a Pilsner malt, and just elevates it. And it has just this really great structure, this bit of sweetness and great foam stability, enzyme conversion, protein. I mean, all the basic parameters that you would want from a base malt. It does all that and then gives you just this extra boost of richness that I absolutely love.
I love that this beer, in some sense, has kind of transformed from a Franconian Keller beer inspired thing into something maybe more American. When I think of Franconian Keller beer, like it's lager, but it's actually a lot more characterful lager than we maybe get out of some of the. And I shouldn't say that the Munich approach is less characterful. There's beautiful character to those beers as well, but up in the Franken, like it, some of those beers are very bold and and even like stronger in some of the fruit character from the hopping. And of course, I did an episode a little while back with Ben Howe from Other Lands where we went deep into some of his work on Franconian lager, and the kind of approach to pH and water is absolutely crazy. There's some good stuff to dig on there. Talk to me about that kind of transformation and how you've pulled in some of the elements of that Franconian Keller beer that you've enjoyed, but also have kind of tried to recast it in this context, this more slightly leaner modern context.
Well, really, again, the expression, the malt expression, is going to be a little more intense. The yeast expression, the hop expression. When you get into those kind of Franconian inspired beers, it's just to me about more expression and a little bit more rusticity as well. Which lends itself to a more elevated and maybe call it less refined. It's a sloppy way of saying it, but like again, you get this additional expression that I really love. And so again, with us not using any filtration, any fining, our beers, especially our lager beers, have had this elevated expression of character, and bringing it into, hey, now it's American Pils, versus Franconian style Keller beer. It's just all about that added expression. And I think that's where the through point is where that elevated expression kind of hits. And so, that's part of the metamorphosis and the change behind it.
I'm kind of fascinated by this because if I think about American Pils, I'm usually thinking about. So, I mean, if you really go back, you're going to think about American Pils as some blend of 6-row with with adjunct, because that's kind of the fundamental kind of basis. And if you're then going that route, you generally will have some of that 6-row kind of more rustic character that you're then trying to tamp down a little bit with with that kind of corn piece into it. And this in fact kind of goes at it with a similar intent, but a completely different route to to find that balance with one barley malt instead of blending those kinds of things. But and then let's talk a little bit about the hot side process, both with Kaiser and with Work, the American and the German Pils. So you go through this mash, or actually, let's finish talking about the mash. Single infusion mash, like you say, direct fire, which gives you some interesting benefits, because while you're not decocting, you could use that direct fire kettle to accomplish some of that kind of Maillard contribution if you wanted it, or also work to not do that if keeping it light and keeping that color and that lighter space is your goal. Talk a little bit about how you use that kettle with both of those intentions.
So really, again, adding that bit of character, that bit of depth, through, that slight bit of kettle caramelization that you do, that extra intense heat, it was largely for us, a purpose, and that came out of necessity. We designed and had the kettle slip rolled locally. So we actually bought the sheets of metal, sketched on a little napkin how we wanted it to be, and took it to a local guy and said, hey, can you weld these pieces together with it for us? And so it's basically a giant hot water heater. You got your fire chamber below, but we largely designed the entire brewery as a, KISS methodology, keep it simple, as a giant homebrew system. Everything is manually turned. Everything is manually moved. Of course, we have pumps and things like that, but it's a way for me to understand and feel very, very connected to the entirety of the process. And so using that kettle as a tool for flavor building in both American Pils and in German Pils has been a great tool for us, again, to kind of mimic some of the character that you might get from decoction, that you might get out of nursing some more character out of a multi-step infusion system, and kind of do it our way, so to speak. The ways and the tools that we have available to us. And so we use that in a variety of different beers to our advantage. A lot of folks are using steam, which is obviously great and highly efficient. But our direct fire system gives us that house character and gives us that extra bit, I think, of richness, a little bit of, not caramel, but caramelization that provides some depth of flavor to an otherwise, fairly bare bones, Pilsner malt driven beer. It gives us some point of differentiation and a house flavor.
Now everyone's direct fire kettle is going to be a little bit different in terms of how much intense heat it puts on any given point of the kettle. For you, how do you balance that? Because you don't want to scorch this. You don't want you don't want it to go too far. Is there any tricks to the way that you just balance that the intensity of that heat and the way that works in your specific kettle?
The organization of the fire brick inside the fire chamber. And so routing, that fire brick in a way that allows for more contact with the heat previous to it escaping the kettle, or less contact, and obviously we're not switching that batch to batch, but we've had 1,000 batches of beer through our system as it stands now. We've learned some things over the year. Every time we take all the fire brick out to put it back in, we try to make sure it's in the same spot, or we try to make, a slight change to see, as hazy IPA became paler and paler over the years, want to make some room for the kettle to not, get that extra kind of super orange character and keep it nice and pale. And for us, it's about dialing back the intensity of the heat, and most notably though, routing the fire brick in a way that allows, either more or less heat contact with the bottom of the kettle.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about hopping then through the boil process. But before we do that, Brightly Software, a Siemens company, partners with organizations at every stage of their asset lifecycle journey. Brightly is a complete asset management and operations software that enhances organizational sustainability, compliance, and efficiency through data-driven decision-making. Streamline maintenance, simplify capital planning, and optimize resources with solutions uniquely designed to support long-term goals. Learn more at brightlysoftware.com. And tickets are on sale now for the annual Craft Beer and Brewing Brewers Retreat, August 23rd through 26th in the hop country of Yakima Valley, Washington. There is nothing like this fantasy homebrew camp experience as you brew in small groups, led by some of the most inspiring brewers in the world. Folks like Vinny and Natalie of Russian River, Ben from Breakside, Henry and Adriana of Monkish, Kelsey from North Park, Whitney from Grand Fir, Sean from Lawson's Finest, and more. This year we'll be brewing under the bines at Balebreaker, and it is sure to be an unforgettable experience. Tickets are on sale now, going fast at brewersretreat.com. Okay, Zach, let's talk about hops in your process here.
So, love hops. I've always loved hops. Hop forward saisons, hop forward IPAs, make some hop forward lagers as well. And so I'm a big first word hopping guy. I've always swore by first word hopping. I really like kind of that gentle character that it gives, that gentle bitterness, a little more refined, a little less sharp than you would get from, say, a 60-minute or a 90-minute, wherever you put it. And so I've always been a huge proponent of first word hopping. And I always really like the aroma that you get out from it as well. And so, coming out of the mash tune into the kettle, once that kettle's, just a little bit full, we'll add our first word hops. And as it's getting up to a boil and we're running off, you're getting some of that oil into the actual wort, and you're bringing some of that aroma and that flavor character with it. And so really like first word hopping for pretty much all of our lagers. I think actually all of our lagers, I don't think we have a single lager that does not do first word hopping. And then I really like to bring
And
in,
are there specific hops that you find work really well in that first wort space?
I mean, huge fan of Middle Fruit.
Okay.
Really love that hop. I know it's expensive to use that many low alpha hops, but I really think it builds some depth and some texture. I'm a big texture focused brewer with IPA, with lager as well. And so that extra texture you get from, those noble type hops or noble hops, I really love to use those in heavy doses. Again, not to extract too much bitterness or too much character, but for the textural component. And so we for a long time we're using more economical varieties like Hercules or Magnum. And as soon as we made the switch, we just thought we've got so much more depth from these first word noble editions. And so with both Work and with Kaiser, those are both Middle Fruit first word hops. And then where they differ, Work versus Kaiser, is in some of the late hopping. And so both the beers get late hops. And so I'm a big fan of kettle burner off hops. And so not cool pulling at all, but we still have some heat in the kettle, but not active heat going on. So we're still getting some isomerization, but a whirlpool hop both of those beers. And so Kaiser gets heavy addition. Well, I say heavy in terms of lager brewing, but maybe quarter pound per barrel, quarter pound to half pound per barrel on the Middle Früh. And then Work gets a blend of Saaz and Middle Früh. And so work has always been a very Saaz driven. I really like German Saaz as opposed to Czech Saaz. German Saaz has been a little bit harder to find in years of recent, but if I can find it and get it, again, we're only making 700 barrels a year. And so contracting 88 pounds that we're going to use in a year is a little challenging, especially when I'm like, hey, can you give me 3 different lots to choose from for these 88 pounds, these 2 boxes that I'm getting? But, maybe we'll talk a little bit more about how I do that later. But yeah, work is with Saaz and Mittelfrüh, and Kaiser is Mittelfrüh.
And are there any other additions in the middle there, or are we just going from first wort to kettle off addition?
Just from first wort to kettle off. And so there are a few lagers in between that get maybe a 30-minute addition, maybe a gentle 15-minute addition. But again, I think from that first wort hop, it really mimics a lot of the character that you're going to get out of a 15, 20, maybe even a 30-minute. We've done some trials with how that is affected. And all I can say is you get a bit more of a sharp character, out of a 30 or a 15-minute addition than you do out of first wort hopping. While getting and meeting kind of that same end goal. And so, yeah, I just like first wort, and then I just like that whirlpool to bring out some additional flavor and aroma, and try and keep it a little simple, right?
I just keep scratching my head on this because, I've had a number of conversations recently, like Jaron at Helper, also talking about how he cool pulled his, GABF gold medal winning German Pils. And now you're telling me that there's no intermediate additions, just first wort and then a kettle off, not quite whirlpool, but whirlpool, type hop addition. And it's like, what's going on here? It's kind of cool to watch, brewers take these techniques that are not necessarily the way that some of the German brewers would classically brew some of these beers, but that accomplish, the same kind of goal, just doing it using techniques that also IPA brewers are pretty fond of. So,
yeah, I mean, it's, again, you're trying to get to an end point, and how you get there, is different for every system, and so a lot of, my ethos as a brewer is, look at it for what it is, not maybe what you intended it to be. Of course, start out with an end goal in mind, but call it what it is. If I start out making, a dark mild and it's not dark enough to be a dark mild, they can't call it a dark mild, right? Call it what it is, because the consumer doesn't care, what your intent was. They care what it turned out to be, and so to be able to kind of get some of these characters from beers that I was inspired by when I was in Germany and Belgium and things, it's like, okay, how can I approach this from my lens and from my capabilities and technical capabilities of my brew house in order to meet those same end goals. And, I'm not talking a pound per barrel in a cool pool in my, my German Pils, but yeah, again, like getting some of that same character in a different way is doable. It's absolutely doable.
Are you then in that kind of, kettle off edition, are you circulating or trying to, maximize that kind of extraction? And then, what kind of timing do you give that in order to pull the hops out, character out of that?
So we recirculate for about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, depending. And so we've within the last couple of years added another whirlpool vessel to our brew house. Everything we're doing is primarily a double batch. And so we'll start, with water on at 5 a.m. and, have a double batch, everything to fill most of our fermenters. We have a couple 7 barrels and a 10 barrel that allows us for some experimental stuff. And that's our pilot kit, basically. But everything else is double batched. And so that whirlpool allows us to save a significant amount of time because, again, we use a lot of late hopping so to run into that whirlpool vessel. And so we're not chilling the temp, in our Pilsners, but we're running it into our whirlpool. We're circulating for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, resting for another 10 or 15 minutes to get that all to kind of settle back to the bottom of the fermenter, and then off through our heat exchanger into the fermenter.
Yeah. And then, so that's hot side process. Then, as we then get into fermentation, I imagine, I mean, actually, I shouldn't assume anything about how you now, ferment both of these, since there's, they could be, different yeasts to accomplish different goals. Talk to me about fermentation, with your lagers here.
So both of those beers have the same origin strain, but one of them is a dry pitch and one of them is a wet pitch. And so,
why?
Well, because they're different. I mean,
okay.
So we have 2 primary strains that we brew with here. It's a 3470 strain. We've done a lot of work with the Augustiner strain as well, which I really love. But it just doesn't necessarily fit with the character of the beers. And so Kaiser sees a dry 3470 pitch. Largely, I think just out of necessity at the time. We're a 700 barrel brewery a year. And so it's really hard for us to time and keep lager pitches going beyond maybe 4 or 5 generations. We do have a small lab here, which is awesome. We're able to count cells. I've invested very early in a lab and in lab work in order to make sure we have healthy pitches and repeatable, countable pitches going into our beers, whether it's, our British Ale 5 strain or our 3470 strains. And so, yeah, Kaiser gets dry 3470 and Work gets a Bayern lager from Omega, which again is the same origin strain. But Bayern brings out to me a lot more malt depth, whereas dry 3470 will bring out a bit more hop character. It can ferment a little cleaner to me as well, even within the same parameters. And so if I'm showcasing or trying to showcase a little more, hop character, so to speak, like we are, even though Kaiser's a very malt-driven beer, we tend to use 3470 as opposed to Work, which is our German Pils, where I want to have maybe that malt shine a little bit more. We'll use that Bayern pitch from Omega. And of course, we've done Kaiser with both the wet and the dry for comparative reasons. I don't know why, other than I just love the way the dry character is in Kaiser versus wet. It's a totally different beer. And it's crazy, but it's a totally different beer.
That's fascinating that, same origin strain, but in the format from a different yeast supplier gives you a completely different thing. But it tracks. Like, we hear the same thing from a number of different brewers. That source of their 3470 is not 3470. Depending on, or it is, but it isn't, depending on
London Ale 3, you know what I mean? Like we've got London, like so many different London Ale 3 variants, across the whole different yeast suppliers. So, I agree with that 100%.
Tell me that you've blended your 3470 origin pitches just to test, because if I assume that blending is something you love to do. How has that worked out?
I'm a home brewer. I like to tinker. I think that blending has been great. But for us to get a small enough pitch, wet pitch to blend in with a dry pitch, just economically, it doesn't make a ton of sense. I can't say there was enough of a big character difference, in those blends. But I also like to blend ale strains too. I blended 3470 with 05. I blended, 05 with T58 and WB06 in tiny amounts. And I know I saw Halfway Crooks out of Atlanta doing a similar thing with their Sanguine. I had heard the Treehouse was doing similar things with their house strains and a blend of different dry pitches. And so I was like, we're small enough and nimble enough. We can try these things and test them out. And so I have a lot of fun with that. But yeah, I blended a lot of yeast, Jamie.
Well, tell me about fermentation dynamics and how they're either the same or different with the wet and dry strains, and then how you kind of manage that then through primary fermentation and then into lagering.
So I really like to knock out cold. We have a cold liquor tank here. We have a nice heat exchanger. The heat exchanger is 40 years old, came from the dairy industry as well. It still has the milk in, milk out stickers on it just for posterity's sake. But it works incredibly well. We have cold groundwater in the winter, but we have a dedicated cold liquor tank as well. So we can brew lager beer, year round, no problem. I like to knock out at 8 to 9 C, oxygenate to about, 20 to 25 ppm. So we do have a Hamilton unit. Again, I'm very focused on lab. I'm very focused on data. And so, investing $10,000, $12,000 into a dissolved oxygen meter just makes sense for me. Might not make sense for others, but again, I'm my wife and I own the brewery, and I beer first. Like, let's do it. She handles the finances. She's like, what'd you spend $10,000 on? And I'm like, trust me. And so, we knock out, 20 to 25 ppm, 8 to 9 C. And then I know I've heard a lot of other breweries doing this as well, but I like to burp the cone, at about 12 to 14 hours. And so, has helped a lot with mercaptan reduction. We do that across all of our beers. So, the following morning after we come in, we're knocking out that second beer, maybe 4 or 5 o'clock the day before, we'll come in and we'll burp the cone. and just get that break material, on into the drain, previous to kicking back up into fermentation and, causing off flavors down the road.
Sure. And then anything, so you start cold. Talk about that process. Are you a de-rest person, or are you doing it the rustic way?
I am a de-rest person. I do understand the benefits of the healthy yeast. And if you're pitching a healthy enough quantity of yeast, you should have diacetyl reabsorption. The home brewer in me, still wants to go to 20C. The practical brewer in me, we'll know about 25% of fermentation. We'll start ramping that up a little bit. So we'll let it go and step very slowly. Again, I'm a slow and low brewer, very methodical with temperature changes and shifts, especially with lager yeast. So we'll go from 8 to 9 to 10 and then to 11. And then we'll let it free rise when we're about 60 to 70% of fermentation is done. We'll let it free rise to about 14C, 13, 14C for a VDK rest. And then after it passes VDK, we will give it another couple of days. So I always like to give it, 2 days beyond VDK rest, just because I can. And I'm able to let that, just again, reabsorb anything. And then we'll transfer it to horizontal. And so once we transfer it to horizontal, that's where, so we're not spunding in primary fermentation. We're letting that beer finished and go to terminal, pass its VDK rest. And all the while we have another lager behind it that we brewed, that we plan to krausen with. And so we krausen all of our lager beers, unless something tragic happens. But all of our beers are krausen. And so it'll get racked to horizontal, and it'll be timed perfectly with where we need the fermentation to be with that krausen pitch. And we'll krausen it while it's being transferred to horizontal. And from that point on, we spund. And so we'll spund as that krausen is actively carbonating and fermenting the beer. From that point, we'll let that get back to terminal. We'll do another VDK check at that point, and then a very slow step crash down to lager temps. And so after it's past VDK, I really like to give it another week at 10C. Let it just kind of reabsorb anything and just kind of give it that nice round depth and maturity. And then I'll go down 1C a day to about 0 to 1C, and a nice long lagering time. So our lagers from start to finish are anywhere from 10 to 13 weeks. I designed the structure of the beer to last that long. And so I'm building these beers, to, let's say, 35, 40 IBUs, aiming for that 25 to 30 in the package after we get that long maturity. I really love a long lager, A, because I really like clear beer, and B, because there's just this depth of maturity that you cannot get by filtration, by fining. It's just mature beer and refined. And I just love that character. Typically around 8 weeks, it's like, okay, I think this beer's ready. And when we think the beer's ready, we always give it 2 more weeks to lager out. And the amount of change that we get from that 8 to 10 week period, it's profound. And I absolutely just love the character that comes from that. And and from that point, we might touch up with a little bit of top pressure, to get to about 2.6, 2.7 volumes of CO2. But it's about 90% or more of the way there, just with the krausen that we're using. But we don't have a single carb stone in our brewery. We don't have a single bright tank in our brewery. Everything is unitanked. And then if we need to touch up with carbonation, we do it via head pressure. Again, that's a texture component. We spun all of our IPAs as well, all of our hazy IPAs too. And so we're big proponents of natural carbonation for its CO2 reduction, but also for its textural component. And so
when you say textural component, what do you mean?
Really, I mean, a lot of people talk about those fine, delicate bubbles. Of course. Of course, hazy IPA is a texture-driven beer. Lager for me is a very texture-driven beer as well. But you just get that kind of floating, pillowy, kind of character, as opposed to that sharp, aggressive sharpness that you would get from just pummeling that CO2 in through a carb stone. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of ways, different great beers out there that are doing it, but it's just something I think it provides for us a bit of house flavor. And you get that softer, silkier character, I think, from not only a naturally produced krausen bubble, but also just from head pressure.
Then talk to me about because you're krausening versus capping or spunding your tank at the end of primary fermentation and going that, like, talk to me about making the decision between those two and why you prefer that krausening route.
So it came down to a textural choice, really. So we used to a cap at the end of primary fermentation in the primary vessel, and then we would rack that to horizontal and then krausen as well. And we found it just, kind of killed some of the foam stability. So we're kind of doing the same thing twice, so to speak. And so it allowed us to, not only pass through VDK quicker, but also reduce a lot of that sulfur content. So I really like, sulfur. Not egregious amounts, of course, but I'm a big sulfur guy. I really just love lager, and so I really love the sulfur character outside of the preservative aspect of it. But it allowed some of that stinky sulfur to blow off in primary fermentation and let that more delicate kind of matchstick sulfur really shine through, and not have to have those lagering times in order to reduce that back down. And so we just found the sulfur character was more where we wanted it by doing it post rack into horizontal with the krausen.
Interesting. Anything else to the lager process for these two, or should we talk about another beer style? Of course, we're going to talk about all of these things, but now we're almost at an hour and haven't talked about anything but lager. Go figure. We start the conversation. Yeah. This is where it ends up.
I'm a storyteller. I'm a brewer. I do like to talk, and lager is one of my top things to talk about. But
are there any other lagers that that have an interesting method to them or an interesting ingredient kind of base that you really love to brew?
Not anything out of the ordinary, to be quite honest. Not anything,
sure.
Super out of the box or super unconventional. We have a lot of different inspirations across all different lager beers. We've done a Dunkel since the early days, Bock, American Bock. So really, there's nothing too crazy or out of the ordinary there.
Yeah, and we've talked a little. You have mentioned here that some of the crossover between your process with pale ale and IPA. So I guess we haven't only talked about lager. We've touched on some of the other high tops. You mentioned something that I want to get back to, and so we don't forget about it. And that is talking about managing the small amount of hops for a brewery your size, getting high quality hops, but being able to do that for a brewery that makes as little beer as you make, and you're not tiny, but you're not exactly knocking down 10,000 pound contracts on things either, given that kind of size. So, but you've developed a strategy in terms of hop contracting that has helped you get the quality of hops that you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I'm very focused on raw materials and getting the best raw materials I can. Being a small brewer, I think we're often given, a lot of, whatever's left, so to speak. And that's fine. I understand that. It's because of the size. We don't have as much clout or buying power than some of the other guys. But I've been able to lean on some of the bigger breweries in the area, or even ones that aren't in the area. And I've said, hey, I really like the character of this beer. Would you mind sharing with me what lot this is? And I've literally blind emailed brewers from California that I'm saying, like, hey, can you give me the lot, specifics you have on there? And so I'll go then to my supplier. Of course, I look at spider graphs like crazy, but spider graphs can only reach so far. Once you've had the character of the beer and tasted it, it's like, oh my gosh, I really love the citric character in here. How can I get back to that? And so I'll ask them questions like where the lot is, and then I'll figure out who grew it and what the farmer is like, and what the farming practices like and things like that. And then if I'm not able to get that same specific lot, I'll look at the spec sheet on that and try to match oil content. And so I'm really looking deep into, okay, what worked out of this hop lot that I really liked. Of course, it's process driven too, but I've just never been afraid to just, again, go right to the people who are making great beer and saying, hey, will you share this with me? Because I would really love to get this. And sometimes they've been like, okay, yeah, I'll send you a box, and I'm like, okay, that's great. And then again, I'll take that oil analysis from year to year and just say, okay, do you have anything within your portfolio that I can get that matches this spec? And they'll say, oh yeah, sure. I can. And, it's also very hard for me, but if I find a box and a lot of hops that I really like, I'll buy it for the entire year. And so my wife and partner that I keep speaking back to does all the finances and everything. And she's like, she knows that I'm going to have some heavy hop purchases because of this. And so if I can find a hop that I love and I want to secure it, I won't contract it and I won't pay fees on it every month. I will just buy all that I can get of it and then just carry that, for throughout the year, until I use it for a specific beer. And, it's a little bit crazy. It can get a little bit wild, but like, we have Citra we use for only West Coast. We have Citra that we only use for hazy. And, if you're a 700 barrel a year brewery, like that might only mean a few boxes. But again, I could just ask the questions to the right people and maybe get a box that they'll sell me from the right people. And it allows us to not have to buy, spot from X, Y, or Z and take too much of a risk. There was just too much variability in raw materials as a small brewer that I had to find a better way. And that's the way I've been able to do it.
So making sure that your spot purchases are coming directly from the hop, brokers, where you can get that kind of data on it, make sure that it's kept in that correct. Now, and then buying them all at once. Now, I mean, that is an interesting one because the brokers, your biggest, brands, like they are also in a sense like finance organizations and banks, and that the process of contracting and paying over time and taking delivery or paying on delivery, however you have those things structured, like they are, basically financing that for you. But obviously they're working that pricing or that financing and carry costs into what they're charging you. You're getting better prices out of these just by buying them and getting them shipped and then storing them yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So we've started this brewery. We never had a loan on anything, and having, two,
never had a loan on anything.
Nothing. Absolutely. I mean, we never had any leverage. I tried to get loans, but I never had a house, up until recently. My wife and I were broke, we didn't come from any kind of money. We had to bootstrap everything. And so we started this brewery, at a 7-barrel kit, with not a single new piece of equipment. Again, that's taken a lot of, reinvestment into the brewery over the year to get us to this point. But I've kind of just taken that same methodology. Like if I can save, 3 to 5% or whatever it is and not pay it to the hop guys, I'm going to set aside some money at the right time of year, and do it. And also we're in Michigan, it gets hot. I won't buy hops or have hops shipped here in anything outside of the winter months. So I get all of my hops in the winter. And I keep them cold and I use them when I need to use them because I'm not going to let them sit on a hot UPS truck or whatever it is. And call me crazy, but yeah, that's just how I've done it.
That's not crazy. And in fact, I've talked to, you look at like Pint House, like they are in Texas and it's hot a lot of the time and they are getting their hops cold shipped, in order to maintain that certain exact thing that you're talking about there. Brewers that care, want to make sure that there's not a weak link in that kind of supply chain. And, but it's interesting, even at your scale, you can manage around that with 700 barrels a year, doing it that kind of way. That's pretty cool. We're not going to have time to talk about IPA on this one, so we'll punt that one and maybe get you back on at some point in the future. We're going to have a broader discussion about that because again, some interesting strategies around how you're making all of these beers. But I want to kind of wrap up with a big picture question and talk about what the future looks like for you, what goals are, because you started as a small brewery, you worked in this kind of large scale Miller Coors distribution or Molson Coors distribution kind of area. You've worked for big craft brands or big beer brands, and wrapped on that. You've worked in kind of on premise, off premise retail. You've seen all of those sides of the beer business, but you also are so insane about brewing that you wanted to start a saison brewery and care about the beer and this entire culture of brewing. You've now got 2 locations. What do you hope for in the future? What are the intentions of growing this? This is certainly a passion-driven business. Like, this is not something you're going to build and sell because, who can walk in and buy something like this, where the owner is also the head brewer and active and hands-on? Like, this is not, anyway, what do you hope for in the future? What's your vision for Urbanrest, in the coming years?
Well, really, my wife and I designed this brewery so we could pass it along to our children. I really fell in love with European culture and the legacy breweries that they have. And so largely for us, like we want to build this for the very long term. And so we're not building it to sell it. We're not building it to sell more at distribution by any means. If anything, we've reduced the amount we've distributed. We have 4 accounts, and they're people that nurture and sell our beer just as I would, and tell our story just as I would. And so our goals are deeper rather than wider. And so again, just getting more deep into the community. We're 8 years in, and we still have people in this community that have no idea that we even exist here. But we finally gotten to a point where our size is sustainable enough for the entirety of our staff, for my wife and I and our home life, and for our children. And so really, I want to pause time, and I know that sounds crazy in a world that's naturally driven by, get bigger and sell. I want to stop time. I want to, if anything, maybe make a little less beer, so it can be more sustainable. I have 2 guys, Trevor and Anthony, that have been with me, 6 and 7 years. We've been able to grow together and really create sustainable futures for us together, for our home life and for the home life of our front of house staff as well. And so if anything, I just want to stay right where we're at. I really am very happy, and I think we're at a good financial and economic standpoint where we have enough buying power, enough reach, that again, we just need to strengthen that equity and that connection within our local community. And then, maybe a little growth comes naturally, maybe a little contraction comes naturally. And I think that's great natural maturity. And those are my goals, deeper rather than wider.
Man, beautiful, and a great place to bring this to a close. G&D Chiller's new Elite 290 Micro Series is built for brewers who care about sustainability and performance. Berkeley Yeast's Dry Tropics London offers their best-selling liquid yeast strain with the ease of use of dry yeast. PacTex handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable. The multi-layered wonders of Indie Hop Strata are now easier than ever for brewers to tap into with Strata Cryo. The Midea 50/50 Flex can convert to all fridge, all freezer, or half and half with just the touch of a button. Keep your customers engaged with new flavors from Old Orchard. Brightly software enhances your data-driven decision-making, and get your tickets now to the Craft Beer and Brewing Brewers Retreat. If you've enjoyed this podcast, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button. Grab an industry all-access subscription if you are in the beer industry or you are operating a brewery. One price, 3 seats for people in your organization, 3 magazines, access to all of our video class library, weekly all-access emails, digital-first stories from Kate, Stan, etc., dozen review submissions per year to Craft Beer and Brewing, and heck, maybe you'll end up with a slew of 96, 95, 94s, just like Zach here at Urbanrest has. Also, just want to kind of throw it out there. If anyone's going to CBC this year, we're planning a pretty fun little podcast event. I won't spoil it for you yet, but save some time on that Monday night, April 20th of CBC, because we are going to do the podcast live. More on that coming up soon. Zach, if people want to learn more about the beer that you make at Urbanrest, come visit one of your tap rooms, try the lagers themselves, try the IPAs and pale ales themselves, even try the saisons, because you are still holding true and making those saisons. Where can they find you in real life, and where can they learn more about the brewery in the digital space?
So we are in Ferndale, Michigan. We share a border with Detroit, so the small suburb of Detroit. You can go to our website, urbanrest.com, Instagram, Facebook at Urbanrest Brewing, or you can shoot me an email, Zach, Z-A-C-H, at urbanrest.com.
Yeah. Cool little spot. And again, other breweries around there that are, within a close enough distance to make a nice little destination of it. And there's a good meadery not too far from you. Also, that
just an okay, just the best in the world, huh?
Just all right, a world-class meadery, not too far either. Also taking advantage of that access to ingredients that you have. Anyway, it's been really fun and fascinating and eye-opening to learn about how you make GBF gold medal winning, American Pilsner with the craft Vienna malt. That's absolutely nuts. But thanks for sharing with that with all of us.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
Zach.
And thank for everything you guys do at the podcast. It's been a huge inspiration for me, and I absolutely love it. You're doing great work. So thank you. And thank you for everything you do for the industry.
Thanks so much, Zach. We'll talk soon. Cheers. This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.